For this project, we are going to use the color wheel as reference. I'm choosing the colors yellow, orange, and red. They're warm colors. We are using tissue paper here, and what I'm doing is ripping the tissue paper into smaller pieces. Now that I have a pile of ripped tissue paper, I'm going to use some water and place it directly onto my page. I'm using a brush to do this. My goal in doing this is to cover my entire page with the tissue paper. The water is acting as a temporary glue. It's just holding the tissue paper in place. Later on, we are going to use water and place on top of the tissue paper, which is going to cause it to bleed. Don't worry, it's not actually being hurt. Bleeding means that the ink is going out of one thing and into another. In this case, we're using tissue paper and the ink is bleeding onto the page. The water is helping it do so. For this process, you want to make sure that you have a lot of water. However, you don't want to soak your page so much that it becomes weak. So finding that happy medium where all tissue paper has some water on it, but the paper can still stay together. For the next portion of this lesson, we are going to use the artwork of Lisa Congdon as our inspiration. Now, as you can see, I have practiced drawing a hand several times in Lisa Congdon's style. This is how I did it. I'm taking my colored piece of paper and I'm placing my hand on top. I just simply made little tick marks, is what I call them, little marks to show where my fingers end. I'm not actually tracing around my hand. I'm going to use my drawing skills now. So I start from where the pinky is all the way to the thumb, and I make a capital U, although one side is a little shorter than the other. Now, it's not a problem if we get a little sketchy, which means if I draw lines that I don't want to be on my final, because actually what I'm drawing right here is going to be the back of my project. So I drew these lines to indicate my fingers. Now I'm using a curved line to go up and over those lines. That's making it look like a hand. Don't forget the wrist. Try to use as much of your paper as possible. So as you can see, my hand goes from the top of the page all the way down to the bottom. That's going to make sure it's nice and big for my final composition. As you can see, I've cut out the hand and I have a tissue paper bleed that is now dry. I'm going to add the extras onto the hand. Some of these extras might include fingernails or lines where you see them on your hands. Or maybe you even have a sleeve on the wrist of your hand. You can use any medium that shows up on colored paper for this. Here I'm using some paint pens, but Sharpie markers, oil pastels, construction paper crayons, or colored pencils would all be good options for this. Now let's think about the composition. The high five piece that Miss Lisa Congdon created has multiple hands on it. I really like that. But I think for mine, one hand is going to work perfectly. I also like that she has some writing. I think I'll include that on my composition as well. Hers says high five. I like that, but I want to try to make it my own. So instead of writing the word 5, I'm going to put the number. I would highly recommend making sure that your writing is at least 1 finger width within the artwork. Try not to put it very close to the edge. You also need to create this in a medium that can easily be seen. So you saw that I used my pencil very lightly to begin with, and now I'm using a paint pen to make it so it's nice and bold and can be seen if someone holds it across the room from us. I love where this is going, but I have noticed that I have some empty spots in my composition. When I look at my model of Lisa Congdon's work, I noticed that she added some extras, like hearts or lightning bolts. Possibly you might want to add that on your project as well. The final step to this project is extremely important. You want to make sure that this hand is glued down nice and tight. I'm using glue stick here, and I'm adding the glue stick on the back of my hand. When I press it down, I need to make sure every finger and the wrist and the center is down super tight. So what I'm doing here is checking for floppies. Floppies are parts that come up. If I find a floppy, I'm adding a little extra glue stick to make sure that it sticks nice and tight. I'm really happy with my piece, and I'm sure you're going to create something of your own, something that's unique, but inspired by our artist, Lisa Congdon.